Welcome to the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery. We're looking at This is Lean by Niklas Modig and Per Ahlstrom. It's a huge hit in Sweden, like a #1 bestseller.
Yeah.
And it's gotten praise from, Toyota experts, even a biathlon legend.
Wow.
So clearly, there's something special here. So we're going to unpack the core ideas, see how they apply to you, right? Whether you're, a total lean pro or just starting out.
What I really like about this book is how it tackles those common misconceptions about lean, like right off the bat.
Yeah.
People think it's all about like cutting costs, but the authors argue it's more about maximizing customer value.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's not about doing less, right? It's about doing the right things. And speaking of doing the right things, the book starts by contrasting resource efficiency with flow efficiency. And they use this really interesting example of two women going through breast cancer diagnosis.
Oh, yes. It's a perfect illustration of the difference between keeping resources busy and actually achieving results.
Right.
So you have Allison, who goes through like a resource-efficient system, meaning, doctors, equipment, always in use.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes her 42 days to get a diagnosis.
Oh, wow.
Now, Sarah, on the other hand, goes through a system that's designed for flow efficiency, streamlined, minimal waiting.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets her diagnosis in just 2 hours.
Wow. That's 2 hours versus 42 days. That's not just about, efficiency. That's peace of mind, maybe even better health outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of us, myself included, we kind of assume a busy system is an efficient system. How does the book challenge that?
Well, they argue that focusing too much on resource efficiency can actually create more work and delays in the long run.
Oh, interesting.
It's what they call the efficiency paradox.
Efficiency paradox. I like that. So tell me more about this paradox. How can being busy actually be a bad thing?
Okay, so think back to Allison's story. That long wait for her diagnosis, it created a whole cascade of secondary needs.
Mm-hmm.
She had to take time off work. Her company had to hire and train a temp. All this extra work, that wouldn't have been necessary if the original process had been designed for flow efficiency.
That's a really good point. It's like, saying work expands to fill the time available. If the system is set up to tolerate long wait times, it's going to create more work to fill those gaps.
Exactly. And the book really dives into the reasons why this paradox occurs. They use some pretty insightful examples.
Okay.
For instance, they talk about how long throughput times create secondary needs, just like with Allison's case.
So it's not just about, speeding things up for the sake of speed. It's understanding how delays in one part of the system can ripple out and create problems elsewhere.
Okay, but this all sounds very theoretical. How does the book make these concepts practical, for someone who works in an office, say?
That's where it gets really interesting. It doesn't just talk about lean in factories.
Mm-hmm.
It applies these principles to knowledge work, too.
Oh,
For instance, remember Little's Law.
It states that the time it takes to get through a process is determined by the number of things in process and the time each thing takes.
Right.
The book encourages us to apply this to our workflows.
Okay, so instead of passengers in line at airport security, we're talking about emails in our inbox or tasks on our to-do list.
Exactly. What are the units in your workflow? And how long does each one take to process? Are there bottlenecks causing things to pile up?
Mm-hmm.
The book helps us see our work through this lean lens.
I'm starting to see how these seemingly abstract concepts, can have very real implications for how we work. So if focusing too much on keeping resources busy is bad, how do we shift towards this flow efficiency?
Well, to answer that, we need to go back to the roots of lean, which the book explores through. The fascinating story of Toyota in post-WWII Japan, they were facing, severe resource scarcity, which forced them to innovate and prioritize flow efficiency in a way that few companies had before.
So limitations breeding innovation. I love that.
It's a classic story of turning constraints into a competitive advantage.
Right.
They couldn't afford to have resources just sitting idle or producing things customers didn't want. This is where their famous pull system came from.
Okay.
Only produce what's been ordered. Minimizing waste in inventory.
Okay, so Toyota had to get really good at seeing the whole process, right? Understanding how each step was connected to the next and making sure everything flowed smoothly to meet customer demand. This is where lean was born, right?
Yes. And what's fascinating is their approach wasn't just about applying a set of tools. It was about cultivating a mindset of continuous improvement. They were constantly looking for ways to eliminate waste and make the flow smoother involving everyone in the process.
So it sounds like lean is more than just a system or a set of techniques. It's a philosophy, like a way of thinking about work and problem solving.
Absolutely.
Well,
But one of the challenges with lean is, the word itself gets thrown around a lot, and it can be hard to know what it really means.
yeah.
The book addresses this head on. They say a lot of definitions of lean are too narrow, focusing on specific tools, rather than the underlying principles.
Okay, so how does this is lean define it then in a way that makes sense? For someone like me who's trying to actually apply it.
They introduced this really helpful framework called the efficiency matrix, which plots flow efficiency against resource efficiency. And they argue that lean is a strategy to move towards both. High flow efficiency, A&D, high resource efficiency.
It's not about choosing one over the other, but finding that sweet spot where both are optimized. But isn't there a natural tension between those two? Like, if you're constantly striving for flow, wouldn't that sometimes mean having resources sit idle?
That's a great question. And the book acknowledges that. There's often a trade-off. The ideal position on the matrix might vary depending on the industry and the customer's needs.
Right.
What's important is to be aware of this tension and to make conscious decisions about where to focus your effort.
This efficiency matrix, it's a great way to visualize the different ways companies approach efficiency. So let's say a company wants to embrace this lean strategy, move towards that sweet spot of high flow and high resource efficiency. Where do they even begin?
Well, the book provides a compelling example of a Toyota dealership in Japan that completely revolutionized their car inspection process.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about what they did.
They managed to reduce their inspection time from a whole week down to just 45 minutes.
45 minutes? That's incredible. How did they manage to do that? What were the secrets to their success?
It really is a remarkable transformation, and it all boils down to, a few key principles.
Okay, so spill the beans. How did they go from a week to 45 minutes?
Well, first, they standardized the process.
Okay.
Created clear steps, timings, visual aids to minimize variation, make sure everyone's on the same page.
So it's about taking the guesswork out, right?
Yeah.
Making sure everybody knows exactly what to do and how to do it?
Precisely. And then they implemented teamwork. Instead of having multiple technicians working independently on, different parts of the car, they had them work together in sync on the same vehicle.
So they eliminated those handoffs and delays that can happen, when work is passed from one person to another.
Exactly. And throughout the entire process, they had this relentless focus on continuous improvement. They were always looking for ways to make the flow smoother, eliminate waste, improve overall efficiency.
This sounds like a great example of what the book calls Kaizen, right?
You got it.
That philosophy of constant improvement, always looking for ways to make things better.
Kaizen is a fundamental principle of lean. And it's not just about making big sweeping changes, right? It's about those small incremental improvements that add up over time.
It's like that saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step or something like that. But let's go back to the efficiency matrix for a second. You mentioned that the ideal position on the matrix might vary, right?
That's right.
Depending on the industry and the customer's needs.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach to lean.
So how does a company figure out where they should be on that matrix? What factors should they consider?
Well, first and foremost, they need to understand their customers.
Okay.
What do they value? What are their pain points? What are their expectations?
Okay, so start with the customer. That's a theme we've heard before.
It's essential.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, lean is about creating value for the customer. If you're not aligned with what they want and need, your efforts will be, misdirected.
That makes sense. But understanding the customer is just the first step, right?
What else should companies consider?
They also need to consider the nature of their work. Some industries are inherently more conducive to flow efficiency than others.
For example.
A software company might be able to achieve much faster throughput times than, say, a construction company.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Exactly. And even within the same industry, there can be significant differences. Like a company that produces custom-made products will have a different efficiency profile than a company that, mass produces standardized goods.
So it's about understanding your industry, your customers, and your unique circumstances, and then using that knowledge to figure out the optimal balance between flow efficiency and resource efficiency.
That's the idea. The efficiency matrix is a tool for thinking about those trade-offs and making strategic decisions about where to focus your efforts.
Okay, so let's say a company has done their homework. They understand their customers, their industry, and their own internal processes. They've identified their ideal position on the efficiency matrix. What's next? How do they actually start implementing lean?
Well, the book emphasizes that lean is a journey, not a destination. It's not something you just implement overnight. It's a continuous process of improvement.
So it's about building a culture of lean thinking, right? Rather than just checking boxes and implementing a bunch of tools.
Absolutely. And that requires strong leadership, clear communication, and, a commitment from everyone in the organization.
So it's not just a top-down initiative. It needs to be embraced by everyone at all levels.
Exactly. Lean is a team effort, and it's most successful when everyone feels empowered to identify and solve problems.
That makes sense. But let's be real. Change is hard. And implementing lean can be a disruptive process, right? How does the book address the challenges and resistance that often come with trying to change the way things are done?
The book acknowledges that there will be challenges. People are naturally resistant to change, especially if they've been doing things a certain way for a long time.
Yeah, we all have our routines and habits. It can be hard to let go of those, even if we know there's a better way.
Right. And that's where strong leadership comes in. Leaders need to be able to articulate the vision for lean, to explain why it's important, and to create a sense of urgency around the need for change.
So it's about painting a clear picture of the benefits of lean and inspiring people to buy into that vision.
Exactly. But it's not just about selling the vision. It's also about addressing people's concerns and providing the support they need to make the transition.
That might involve training, coaching, or simply listening to people's feedback and concerns.
Exactly. Lean is about respecting people and empowering them to be part of the solution.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of understanding the customer, identifying your ideal position on the efficiency matrix, and building a culture of lean thinking. But what about the actual tools and techniques of lean?
Right.
The book mentions a lot of different approaches like value stream mapping, 5S, Kanban, and Kaizen.
Right. Those are all important tools in the lean toolbox.
But it's important to remember that the tools are just a means to an end, right?
Mm-hmm.
The real goal is to create value for the customer and to improve the overall flow of work.
Precisely. The tools should be used to support those goals, not as an end in themselves.
So it's not about blindly implementing every lean tool you can find. It's about understanding the principles behind the tools and using them strategically to address your specific needs.
Exactly. And that's why it's important to have a deep understanding of lean principles before you start throwing tools at a problem.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But let's face it, some of those lean terms can sound pretty intimidating.
Yeah.
Can you break down a few of the key concepts for us, starting with value stream mapping?
Sure. Value stream mapping is basically a visual representation of the entire process from start to finish. It helps you see the big picture and identify areas where there's waste or inefficiency.
So it's like a map that shows you the flow of work and helps you identify bottlenecks or areas for improvement.
Exactly. And it's a collaborative process. It's best done with a team of people who are involved in different parts of the process.
Okay, that makes sense. What about 5S? That one always sounds a bit mysterious to me.
5S is a methodology for organizing your workspace to improve efficiency and safety.
So it's about decluttering and creating a more streamlined work environment.
Yes. It stands for 5 Japanese words: sort, set in order, shine, standardize, and sustain.
Okay, so it's a systematic approach to cleaning, organizing, and maintaining your workspace.
Precisely. And it's not just about making things look neat and tidy. It's about improving efficiency by reducing wasted time and effort.
I can see how that would be beneficial, especially in a busy work environment.
Right. And then there's Kanban.
Ah, Kanban. That one's been getting a lot of buzz lately.
It has. Kanban is a system for managing workflow and inventory.
So it's about making sure the right work is being done at the right time and that there's no unnecessary buildup of inventory.
Exactly. It uses visual signals like cards or sticky notes to track the progress of work and to signal when more work is needed.
So it's a way to create a more visual and transparent workflow.
Precisely. And it's a very flexible system. It can be adapted to, a wide variety of work environments.
That's great. So we've got value stream mapping for seeing the big picture, 5S for organizing our workspace, and Kanban for managing workflow. And of course, we've got Kaizen, that philosophy of continuous improvement underpinning it all.
That's right. Kaizen is the heart and soul of lean. It's about constantly striving to make things better, even if it's just in small ways.
And it's about empowering everyone to be part of that improvement process, right?
Absolutely. Lean is most successful when it's a collaborative effort.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but I'm curious. The book mentions this story about a legendary Toyota manager who was invited to assess a company's lean efforts. Can you tell us more about that story?
Ah, yes, the story of Ubasan. It's a classic lean parable.
I'm all ears.
So this company, they'd been, diligently implementing lean for quite some time. They were proud of their progress, clean workplaces, visual planning boards, low inventory levels, all the latest lean tools in place.
Sounds like they felt pretty confident in their leanness then.
Oh, they did. But when they invited Ubasan, a renowned Toyota manager, to assess their efforts, he wouldn't give them a straight answer about how lean they were.
Oh, really? That must have been frustrating. Why wouldn't he give them a clear assessment?
Well, that's the brilliance of the story, right? Ubasan's silence. It wasn't meant to be cruel. He was trying to illustrate a fundamental point about lean. It's not about, reaching a perfect state or getting a gold star. It's about that constant striving for improvement, the never-ending journey of making things better.
So it's not a destination. It's a mindset.
Exactly. And that can be both liberating and challenging. Liberating because you're never done, right? There's always room to grow and learn.
Right.
Challenging because it requires constant vigilance and a willingness to question even the things that seem to be working well.
This reminds me of something we talked about earlier, Kaizen, that philosophy of continuous improvement. It's like woven into the very fabric of lean.
It is. And it's one of the things that differentiates lean from, other management fads that come and go.
Lean is about building a culture where everyone is empowered to identify and solve problems, to experiment and learn, and to make things better every single day.
So it's not just about, implementing a set of tools or techniques, right? It's about fostering a certain way of thinking, a commitment to excellence that permeates the entire organization.
You got it. And that's something that can't be measured by a checklist or a consultant's assessment. It's something that has to be lived and breathed by everyone involved.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I'm starting to see lean in a whole new light, not just as a set of tools or techniques, but as a way of life, a philosophy of continuous improvement that can be applied to so many different areas.
I'm glad to hear that. And remember, you don't have to be a, Toyota executive or a lean expert. To start applying these principles, the book offers a lot of practical advice on how to get started, even with small changes. That's encouraging. So what are some of the key takeaways that someone like me who's, maybe a little intimidated by the whole lean thing can start implementing today?
One of the simplest but most powerful things you can do is start thinking about your work in terms of flow.
Okay.
What are the steps involved in getting things done? Where are the bottlenecks? What are the unnecessary delays?
Okay, so kind of like a mental value stream map
Yeah,
of my own workflow.
exactly. Once you start seeing your work through this lens, you'll be amazed at how many opportunities for improvement you can identify.
And you don't have to tackle everything at once.
Absolutely not.
The book emphasizes starting small, focusing on one area for improvement at a time.
Absolutely. Pick one thing that's, bugging you, that's creating friction or wasted time, and figure out how to make it flow better. It could be as simple as, streamlining your email inbox or reorganizing your desk to minimize distractions.
Right. Those small wins can create a sense of momentum and inspire you to tackle bigger challenges.
They can. And don't underestimate the power of involving others. Lean is a team sport. Talk to your colleagues, share your ideas, and see if you can work together to improve the flow of work in your team or department.
This whole idea of continuous improvement, of always striving to make things better, it's contagious, isn't it?
It is, and it's one of the most rewarding aspects of lean.
Yeah.
When you start seeing the positive impact of your efforts, when you see things flowing more smoothly and people feeling less stressed, it creates this positive feedback loop that fuels further improvement.
I'm feeling inspired. This book, This is Lean. It's really opened my eyes to a whole new way of thinking about work and problem solving. Highly recommend it to anyone who's, even remotely interested in improving their efficiency and effectiveness, whether in their professional or personal life.
I completely agree. It's a valuable resource for anyone who wants to understand the essence of lean and how to apply it in a practical and meaningful way.
Well, I think we've covered just about everything there is to know about lean. In this deep dive, we've explored the key principles, the efficiency matrix, the power of flow efficiency, the importance of continuous improvement, and even some practical tips on how to get started.
And remember, lean is a journey, not a destination. So be patient, be persistent, and never stop learning and growing.
That's a great message to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Lean. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep making things better. See you next time on the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery. Until next time.
See you then.